And here we go. How's everyone doing on this fabulous Friday? We got a lot to go over today. I've had a lot of big things happen this week, but we've also had a lot of Linuxy things in the news and some stuff I wanted to talk about in the tech world. So, let's get right into it. Oh man, it has been a bit of an adventure this past week. I had probably one of the most fulfilling days in my entire career yesterday, where I got to do some really cool migrations at my day job to where everything in the whole server rack of the business I'm still at is now has everything. Like, I think the oldest electronic I have in a rack now is about 2 years old. So pretty awesome that I've done this huge migration. And it was really cool, like upgrading domain controllers and just tying back in. It felt like kind of like the completion of my career, which is really pretty cool. But let's get into the news today. If I do get interrupted today or you hear my phone ringing, that's just because some of the fallout from the migration, because nothing's ever 100%. So when it comes down to the news of the week, I've seen this all over the place. Windows based on Linux. And I needed to touch on it. It was, well, let's just say Windows based on Linux. I have a completely counterpoint to pretty much everything you say and read, because I wanted to show you this on my desktop. This article, and there's been a bunch of articles going over this, a bunch of YouTube videos going over this on Linux-based Windows. A lot of people have touched on this. This is not a new idea, but it just got a bunch of traction because Eric Raymond came out and saying, hey, it makes perfect sense. And there is some valid points here. I'm not just going to say, hey, this is just complete crap, because Eric's a smart guy by all means. And basically his justification, the too long didn't read of this article, was Microsoft's now making a lot of money off Azure, which is all Linux based. And they have a huge cost center with the Windows kernel and its upkeep. While it makes sense to switch to Linux kernel on its front end from a technical perspective, which no qualms here, yes, Linux would be a lot better, but there's some things about this that I just don't agree with, and some things we need to talk about. Because I think a lot of people get stuck. Today's society is a little weird because we view businesses as, hey, it's not about profits and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, businesses need to make money, and it's really, they will follow that trail wherever that leads them. Typically, it goes into the customer experience, understanding all these things. And why this doesn't make any sense to me is from the business perspective. Microsoft and all the Windows-only applications, Adobe Creative Suite, Office, all these things need to be migrated to Linux first before any kind of transition happens. That's just, you can't do it without that. A lot of people might point to how Mac has switched architectures between PowerPC back in the mid-2000s to, x86. Well, that was fine. And they point to the Rosetta, translation, where they actually did a translate from PowerPC programs to that. It was terrible. Like, if you use those programs and was actually translating programs, it was bad. So to say there's a compatibility layer and then everything just magically works as it is today on Windows, now it'll be on Linux, that's not a thing. You'll definitely see some kind of fallout from that. So it has to be worth it to Microsoft. And I'm going to tell you right now, they would lose their vendor lock-in, because someone like me, if I had the option to stay in Linux 100% of the time or just do Windows, obviously everyone would be like, okay, I'm just going to use Linux, or most people would, and they would lose market share. However, I want to just put this out there. It does start making sense as less desktop users exist. So where I could actually see this happening is when desktop users or people that get on a laptop or get on a computer become so minor that it just doesn't matter anymore, to where the amount of money they're taking in from Azure and all these other platforms that aren't based on desktop users, that's where the change happens, because the user base becomes just not necessarily tiny, because I think there'll always be a place. Like, heck, I'm on so many computers day in and day out. I'm sure you all are too. But you got to remember, your average day user has switched to like iPads and phones and all this other stuff. So as that continues happening, and the decline of the desktop user continues, we might see something there. But will it happen today? Will it happen this year? Will it happen in the next 5 years? No. It's just not. There's just no way they can transition, nor would the desire be there to transition. So I wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. I saw that article. I saw a lot of people going, oh yeah, it's going to happen. I'm like, no, it's not. So I just want to say that it might happen, 10 years from now, because desktop users just really are just a small fraction of the population, and it just doesn't make sense to do that massive upkeep of the Windows kernel. So, and yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to go over in today's thing. I also just wanted to say it's been one heck of a fun week for me, because there's some projects I have on my radar. And in that same vein of Windows and other things, I wanted to kind of make something new. Some people following the channel know that I like to build my Linux up from like a scratch, like a server environment, and then tack on like a desktop environment and other things. And I got to thinking, I think it was like a live stream I did over on Twitch. And I was talking about actually doing the same thing for Windows. Instead of de-bloating from a level, could you take Windows from a CLI and then bring it up and start adding things to it? And it kind of, there's some fun things I kind of want to explore, and I might be having a little bit of a break in videos as I kind of explore this topic, but it's worth doing because a lot of people don't understand server core. And just so you all know, like I said, Windows Server is my specialty. I've done it for 20 years. That's like my first cert was over, I think, SBS 2003 server. So just to date me a little bit there, that was one of my first ones. And I got like an MCITP for Enterprise Administrator for like Server 2008, one of my favorite Windows operating systems, by the way. 2008 R2 still like holds a special place in my heart, believe it or not. But with Server Core, which came out in 2012, it was actually called Nano Server. 2016, they rebranded it to Core, and now 2019 exists. I want to take a Core install, which doesn't have a GUI or pretty much anything other than a command prompt, and build a Windows environment on top of it. I want to see if I can take a 2019 Server Core, leverage WSL2, and build like a Linux GUI. As I say, hey, Windows can't be on top of a Linux kernel. What if we could just minimize a lot of the technology of the Linux kernel? So that's a fun project I want to do. So I've just been kind of thinking over that, and something I'm going to explore. Also on that, I wanted to revisit building a Linux one from scratch. The last one I did was on Arch. The next one I'm going to do Debian based, which will be fun as well. So actually, I just saw something in chat. What's your opinion on uneducated product reviews and sponsorships? Joe, this is an interesting thing. As I get into YouTube land, and I'm more of a traditional business guy, I still love my day job. And honestly, I say day job, but it's more of like 1 or 2 days a week. And as I upgrade that business that I'm still at, they're going to need me less and less. I'm literally making myself obsolete at that business. And I love them. I love working for them. But I want to get to the point where I'm there maybe 1 day a week, maybe 1 day every 2 weeks or a month, very rarely. So my goal is to downsize myself so much with them to where, one, they're paying me less money and I'm spending less time with them. And I'm very fortunate to be in that position, and I'll just continue working with them until they're just like, okay, well, we don't really need you anymore. You've made everything so automated that we don't do that. So if that ever achieves, maybe maybe a year or two from now. That would be cool, but we'll see how that goes. But getting back to your point about YouTube sponsorships, I love sponsorships as long as a YouTube person is working directly with the, and I'm definitely gonna, this is probably definitely gonna come back to bite me at some point in time, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. I hate middlemen. If I can't work directly with the sponsor, I just say no. As you notice, I don't have much sponsors on the channel. If I do have a sponsorship, it means I am directly communicating with that company. I have a contact and I can just reach out to them and do it. I've done sponsorships in the past through middlemen, or when I say middlemen, it's basically a big company will just give a ton of money to a certain middleman, and then they'll just try and get the best deal with a bunch of influencers. That's how most sponsorships work on YouTube. And I hate it because the contracts are terrible. They lock you into exclusivity clauses, and they'll actually lock you down into confidentiality, where you'll have a project manager and they don't want you to tell the brand how much you're getting paid because they're pocketing a lot of the money on the side too. So it's a really dirty business when it comes to YouTube, and a lot of the that is attributed to the age of a lot of YouTubers where they've just been taken advantage of, to where most of my sponsorships, not most, all my sponsorships are me working directly with the brand. So if you see someone on the channel, it means I've talked to someone directly from that company and I'm working directly with them. The company is like FameBit, Popular Pays. There's a billion middlemen out there, and I've used some of them and they all suck. They're all terrible. I won't ever do them. I've gotten a couple contracts from them and talked to some of them because I really like the brand that was representing them. But at the end of the day, I look at the contracts and I'm just like, this is just, ugh. And a lot of times they just nickel and dime me, and just, it's just a bad experience all the way around. So if any brands are watching this, just call me. or email me, whatever, because I like working directly with the brand. If I don't have that direct line, it just, I think, comes off bad, and you end up with a really crappy review, where you do have a huge amount of reviews on YouTube, or just these middlemen of nickel and dime the YouTuber to pay him like $500 for a review, and it's just like, ugh, it's a bad, dirty environment. I'm hoping more people will follow that blueprint that I just kind of laid out and just say, hey, I don't want to work with these guys, and hopefully they'll all just go out of business and we'll have more direct lines with brands, and I think that will overall improve YouTube in general. So that's it. Thanks so much for the super chat there, Jonathan. Or oh man, not Jonathan. Joe Nardin. I'm sorry. Sorry about butchering your name. I always do it. So as far as the rest of a lot of the things I wanted to talk about today, some other stuff kind of popped in my feed, and actually I got an email as well about this, and it's Facebook. So I want to show you this real fast. The Guardian article actually left a link in the description about this when it comes to Facebook quitting over Europe. Somebody, another YouTube channel, actually think they did a really good take on this. So I wanted to show you all this. This right here, Facebook may quit Europe over ban on sharing data. So a lot of people vaguely know about the privacy laws in Europe, which I actually support, even though it's kind of a pain in the butt with, like, I think it's the GPDR. I might be saying that wrong. I usually mix up my acronyms, but the privacy laws basically state that Facebook's in violation, which they are. They have been forever. There was, safe harbor law. There was some privacy laws that do it, but Facebook's a billion-dollar company. At the end of the day, all governments are influence over money, and there's just a ton of money in Facebook. So this whole article, I think Facebook will continue in Europe, even though they'll make some veiled threats. Don't worry about it. It's nothing too bad to worry about. But at the end of the day, they'll just buy their way back in. That's my take on it. They're not going to get banned in Europe. They're too big. They're too big to fail. uh, but that YouTube video I linked in the description kind of goes more in depth why that's kind of the case and how they've kind of skirted around the privacy laws. Because I've made a video, I think a while back, I probably should link that in the description too, where I basically called Facebook the devil and how they do things. And it was true. I haven't changed my opinion on that. A lot of Facebook has... they've always sold out their users. All your data you put on Facebook is monetized. Any advertiser I've ever worked with, they want me to have a Facebook. They want me to have an Instagram. And Facebook and Instagram's the same company. But the reason for that is there's so many tools for an advertiser, and then you go, hey, I want to target 14-year-olds that are using their phone for 4 hours a day, and also check these 2 sites on the regular. I want to give ads to that. And you can. And that's wrong. That's a huge invasion of privacy. I mean, they take it to an extreme to where it makes Google look like a saint. And that's why I'm like, hey, Facebook, they'll buy their way out of these privacy laws even though they're violating them. Even though they should be banned, that'll just never happen because of the money influence and also how they actually work. So don't worry if you're a huge Facebook user and you're in Europe. It's a lot of these articles are just kind of clickbaiting you, even though they do have a point. Even though yes, they are in violation, it's still gonna keep going. So that's where I'm at with those 2 articles that I wanted to talk about today. It's one of those things, don't worry too much about it. And and that's social media in general. Like a lot of times my points of view on social media, even though YouTube is a form of social media, I really look forward to it evolving past what it is right now. Every social media, the end goal, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, they want to keep you on the platform as long as possible. That's their end game. That is what they really, really want. So that's where we're at with social media in general. And I hope this evolves into, I think YouTube will be the first one to really see the maturity here. A lot of people know I like YouTube for the most part, but I want to see it mature to where it really leverages a lot of the education and the good parts of YouTube. And the good parts of YouTube is you can type how to fix your car, how to fix a computer, how to fix whatever, and you can find tangible results. You can elevate your skills. You can develop a lot more as a person and just become an amazing individual, amazingly talented and skilled just off of YouTube. However, I think a lot of people take that portion and then they don't understand there is also a lot of bad in YouTube where you could just waste your life away watching just garbage. So, you got your, Jake Pauls and Logan Pauls of the world that are just terrible. That's on the platform. So I would love to see YouTube really lean more towards that aspect of it, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. If you guys have any questions, I'm watching chat here, and we'll get into some Q&A because, yeah, I wonder what happens with all this. This is just my hot take on all of it. GSN, I will read your email. I think you were actually asking. Actually, I think I browsed through it. A lot of my emails I don't actually respond to, just because I get a lot of it. But the gist of his email was he was asking, could you split up a singular drive between Apple and Linux? And you can. Apple uses, I think, AFS, and that's not readable by Linux. Or a lot of times when you format your drives in Linux, you'll use like ext4. Please note that you can split up that drive. You can boot to both partitions, but you might run into some issues with that. I prefer to have 2 drives anytime I do a dual boot or even a tri-boot scenario where I might be doing Windows, Mac, and Linux in a box. It's just mileage will vary based on that. So I would prefer to have 2 drives. Yes, it's possible with a singular drive. However, you may run into some really big difficulties with accessing that second partition you make for Linux and using OpenCore to boot to that Linux partition, because it's not really meant for that. What I'd recommend if you try to do a singular drive, and honestly, even if you do multiple drives, REFI, EFI ND or D, refined, I think is how I say it. But check it out. It is an amazing tri-boot. It supports Mac, Windows, and Linux, and you can install it on your Mac, you can install it on your Windows, you can install it on your Linux. Really easy. And I love the booter because you can actually modify it on boot up. Is there a custom ROM you prefer on your phone? I used to be really big into the custom ROMs, but I don't really like them that much anymore, just because I like the AOSP experience, or sometimes there's a modded, more stock settings. There's a lot more security on our phones, specifically with like Apple Pay or Google Pay type of scenarios where, obviously in this instance, Google Pay, where if you modify the kernel, a lot of times they consider that being unsecure and you can no longer use some services. So custom ROMs to me aren't really worth it on an Android anymore. However, seeing the Pine phone and loading new operating systems, it's a whole new frontier we're starting to develop. And I need to do an update video, which I will do here in the future. Is it worth doing a UEFI install if I'm not dual booting? Not really. I mean, honestly, I usually bypass the bootloader completely on all of my single OSs. So if I have one box dedicated to an OS, I always just say, forget it, and just go directly into it. So don't bother doing a UEFI install. If you already have legacy there, you typically set the timeout to 0 or hidden on the menu selection, and you just go right in. Obviously, that's what Windows stock settings is, and you don't really have any issues with obviously Mac as well is pretty much the same way. So not really worth changing your bootloader or any of that out. What do you think about the new 3000 RTX series with the links? Actually, I went over that in the last live stream, Prince. It's okay. We'll see what happens. I think, honestly, the 3000 series will be a huge boon, obviously, and they'll update the drivers for Linux. It might take them a little bit. We'll see how quickly that happens. I don't know if the drivers are already working in Linux. Does anybody in chat have a 3000 series? Because I haven't been able to get my hands on one. I haven't been able to order one. And I'm just like, oh, well, I'll wait for the RDNA 2 release, I think is where I'm at right now. Should I switch from Windows to Linux as a coder? I think it's always good to learn Linux. I would start with like WSL and maybe a VM and then see if you like it. You know, I always tell people, use what you like. If you like Windows, stay on Windows. I don't care. I think it's just fun to know the options. Know what you don't know it is what I like to say. So it's always worth checking out and trying. Have you ever tried any condenser microphones, or is your server in your studio too loud? Joe, I'm glad you asked this question. I have a massive amount of background noise in this room, even though I got all this foam padding and I got a huge padded blanket on the wall. I got all this crazy stuff all over the place, but I have a ton of noise in here. It's not a proper studio. I was actually worried because there was a truck outside doing an industrial wood chipper throwing branches in today. So luckily he hasn't run. Watch him. He'll fire it up right here in a minute after I mention it. But I can't use a condenser mic at all. Dynamic is all I can do right now. And even dynamic, even with the Shure SM7B, it's very, very minimal, where this is great at blocking background noise. Probably one of the best microphones for background noise blockage. And it still catches some hisses and hums from a lot of the electronics I have going on here. But I'm always trying to improve my audio and look forward to when I can do that. And actually move out to a legit space. Probably a couple years from now before I can do anything like that, though. What's my opinion of Fedora 33? I love Fedora. Fedora was actually my very first Linux desktop environment. First server environment was CentOS. CentOS 6 was my very first Linux distro per se for a server, because I was on Linux server for many years before even knowing or even touching desktop. So I love Fedora. Fedora's cool. It's good. I like the DNF package manager too. They're one of the only ones that do meta distribution, I think, and are able to update your OS fast. It's a lot faster than apt. It's a lot faster than Pacman and a lot of other distributions out there. So Fedora has a really good package manager in DNF after they upgraded from Yum. And so if you're still on Fedora, they still, I think, install Yum by default, but DNF is really probably my favorite package manager out there. I mean, it's pretty awesome. It's up there. One package manager doesn't get a lot of attention is swapd, and it's a Clear Linux package manager that they redid. Very interesting, along the same lines of the Fedora DNF, and I like how that one works, even though it doesn't have practically any packages in its repository, and it's terrible to try and live in. But it's just neat that those type of things, I wish they would just incorporate and upgrade APT to be a little bit better than it is right now, because if you're still using like a Debian based install, Pop, Linux Mint, whatever, check out APT Fast or Fast APT. That's a really good package to actually increase the speed, because right now APT is so archaic and slow compared to many other package managers. I had DNF running at 5 or 10 megs while Pacman run at 50 megs. Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of Arch repositories won't even support that much speed. So you're definitely the minority in that one, Giglamesh of Babylonia. It reminds me of Final Fantasy 11, actually, that name. Cool name. APT Fast. Thanks, Sparky. What's the point of installing GNOME OS if you're going to install KDE over it? Yeah, there's no point in that, that's for sure. Will you do a Linux from scratch tutorial? I find your teaching method very good. I probably won't be touching Gen 2 or Linux from scratch, and I kind of lump those into two just because of the length of time, and the usage behind those two are minimal for a daily usage, just because you're constantly compiling packages and building packages instead of using easy binaries that are on distributions or repositories that you can download. So I won't be covering Linux from scratch in the near future. Same with Gen 2, just because there's not a lot of practical use for a daily driver, but I encourage other people to try them, as you can learn a lot from both those ways of running Linux, which is great. Yeah, Final Fantasy 11, man. I was a huge Final Fantasy 11 player. I think I maxed out all my jobs. I think I'm level 99 in almost every job in Final Fantasy 11, so I spent a good chunk of my life in Final Fantasy 11 for games. I loved MMORPGs, old school ones, when it was difficult. When I say difficult, just time consuming, really. Final Fantasy 11, EverQuest was another big one. Those are my two favorites for sure. Any thoughts on how your videos have impacted the wider world? Not really, Ron. This is kind of a selfish statement, but I wanted to make YouTube videos to make a library, just try and take all of my knowledge up here and just dump them onto the web. Somewhere along the lines, you get a little lost in that thing. But when I started YouTube, my initial thought was, I'm just going to take everything I know. So I started with like these really complex topics like virtualization and Windows Server. If you just go to my main channel page and click the little search, you can actually search my videos and find that specific thing that I'm talking about. It goes on, some of those original videos start kind of dying off, and you don't get any search results from a library, because I'm trying to archive a lot of my knowledge, and I've done a pretty poor job of it, to be frank. And And I haven't really touched too much on that. Sometimes I like to dive into it a bit. Like I think I made a video about making Windows Server a gaming PC and that type of thing. But I'll revisit it for sure and do that. But as far as overall impact on the wide world, I think anytime I get a comment, an email, or just a chat message that's like, hey, I tried Linux because of your videos, thank you so much, that just means the world to me. So I don't think about the bigger impact too much. I just try to help people really adopt Linux, or at least try it. You know, that's the one thing. If you hate it, that's cool. You know, I just want people to try something so they understand the differences between Windows and Linux. No, did my stream buffer? It's showing good on this end. Yeah, tutorial videos in Linux. There are a bunch of outdated ones. Most of mine, are all in the past 2 years, so they're still all pretty relevant. But definitely, as time goes on, we'll see that kind of pop up. Lowbrow YouTube content. Do you see YouTuber? A lot of the YouTuber versus YouTuber stuff, I just don't care. I hate to say that, but a lot of people, you'll get attacked. You'll see people attack ex-YouTuber about something because guess what? At the end of the day, when you're churning out video after video after video, you're going to end up making some bad videos. How I gauge the success of a video is I come back to it 6 months later, and then I look at the recent comments, and if all the recent comments are, this is terrible, I'm like, all right, yeah, that was a bad video. I'll need to revisit that and redo it. Sadly, I think my top performing video on the channel, I think it has a 1.1 million views or something, about Windows. It was back when I was just starting a lot of my videos, and the production and the thought process and how I laid out things were a little bit bad, I would say. The content itself is still okay, but a lot of people misconstrued that video for what it was and blindly just followed all the instructions, even though I did say there's several warnings there. I'm like, hey, if you turn off firewall, you're insecure. Make sure you're in a protected environment if you disable firewall, for instance. And then, of course, every comment is like, oh my God, firewall disabled. So there's certain things you just really can't say on YouTube or really show a tutorial guide, even with all the disclaimers. People just get that. And then you'll have people that like run my debloat script, and then all of a sudden they're having tons of computer problems. I'm like, those problems were underlying before you ran the script, man. The script only does X, Y, and Z. You can read every line of it, and it's all open source. So there you go. So it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things that, you know, I don't like redoing a lot of videos. I don't like rehashing the same content either. So how is she doing in Linux, and are you going to do more? Yeah, as far as teaching my daughter and son about Linux, a lot of times I will always do fun stuff with them. A lot of times I don't do it on video just because of some of the newer child laws about having them on camera and those types of things, so I don't want to fall into that. But we just this past weekend did a RetroPie install and kind of hashed that out, so that was a lot of fun. So I love it. Someone actually asked real fast in chat, yay or yoart. Yeah, yoart has been deprecated for like years. Don't use yoart. If you see instructions about yoart, just no. Install yay, use yay. That's still updated. It's good. It's on the Go language. It's a little bit longer to install, but it's worth it. Don't use yoart. Or if I'm saying that wrong, yoart, whatever. It's a dead project anyways. Oh, and yes, thank you for the reminder. We do have new merch in the store at store.christitus.com. Trizen is also very good. Yeah, if you don't like Yay, use Trizen for sure. That's another one for those Arch users out there. Is LXDE a dead project? LXDE is a dead project. it's transformed into LXQT. The team transitioned to LXQT, so don't use LXDE anymore, use LXQT. I think LXQT is a little bit heavier, but not much. I mean, we're talking like megabytes, like maybe 10 or 20 megabytes difference between the two, so not anything of any consequence. So use LXQT for sure. You just can't go wrong with that. Is there a repo for app images? I don't know of one. App images are fantastic if you're using Flatpak. Don't use snaps. You know how I feel about snaps. And then app images. I love app images because it's all just in one file and you just run it. I typically have a folder on all my Linux boxes if I'm going to use an app image. Just call it app images and just drop them all in there. I like to use app images when I love a specific version and I don't really want to update very often. That's a good use of app image. Will RDNA have SRIOV for consumer cards? Thoughts on that? Probably not, but man, it would be awesome if they did. I would support RDNA 2. In every video, I'd be like, go buy an AMD graphics card if they supported it. So that's where I lay in that. It should happen. It would be awesome if it did, but it's probably not. Let's face it. AMD graphics division hasn't made the best choices. However, I really do hold out hope for RDNA 2. I think they'll release a really good budget card that I think will appeal to a lot of folks out there. Thoughts on Alillicree? Whatever. I know what you mean. It's the really fast terminal. It's the fastest terminal out there. I think it has hardware acceleration terminal where you can save microseconds or milliseconds. That's cool. Sure, use it, I guess. I like the fancy terminals, so a lot of times I end up using something different. These days I just kind of use whatever's there. So I'm not too crazy with my terminal usage. I don't really bounce around too much. Most people know I use Terminator, which is a pretty old project. I don't even know if it's seeing too many updates these days. I think the last update was like in 2019, but I still love it. I still use it all the time. It has like a built-in multiplexer, a really good, powerful portfolio section, which is great, which I love for my Linux boxes. For Mac, I like to use iTerm 2. For Windows, obviously, Windows Terminal has some promises. I really hate how they did a lot of the editing. I forget if it's an XML. I think it's an XML file or a Lua file. I forget. Editing that file kind of stinks on Windows Terminal, so I wish they would make a better interface for editing and kind of pimping out Windows Terminal, and I think they will. It's still pretty early days of that. Have you tried Tmux? Yeah, Tmux is awesome. Josh, let's see here. I actually have a project for you. For those Tmux users, you guys want to try something, I got something really cool. And I'm going to see if I can't find it. I'll link it in the chat. It's a GitHub project where this guy went and modded out Tmux. And I got to tell you, it's just amazing. And I'm not even going to try and do his name because I will butcher it. But check this out. This is just fun. This right here is a GitHub project for Tmux. It will add a lot of just whiz-bang features, which is amazing. You got like uptime right here. You can see the tabs in Tmux. So when you're doing multiplexing, you have constant tabs. You also have right here where you split it up and you can flip between them. You have battery power for laptop users, time, and you can customize all this. So if you want to give Tmux a whirl and really pimp out your terminal, this will be great. So check out that open source project. I've messed around with it, used it a little bit, as I'm not real familiar, I'm not real comfortable in Tmux, but I can use it, and a lot of times when I do use it a lot, I end up referring back to this project, which is just simply amazing. I love the open source community just because if you can think it, it's already been done. Like everything, there's like, I don't think an original thought out there. Anytime I'm like, oh, you know what, I need to make this, I go search for it, and I'm like, oh yeah, someone already made an open source project, and they did a way better job than I could ever do. So a lot of That's the beauty of a lot of the stuff out there in open sources. You can take somebody else's idea, look over it, oh, you know what, I can improve it a little bit, and then release your own, which that's what I did with like my Windows 10 scripts. A lot of that wasn't coded by me. I only added like chocolatey and some other features into that. But a lot of times I was taking actually two scripts. One was a debloat script, one was an actual system admin script for modifying Windows 10 that you'd run from a group policy standpoint. And that's what I did with my debloat scripts. I just took those two already existing projects, combined them into one, and then added some more features where people could easily customize it and to make the ultimate Windows install. Windows 10 damaging SSDs. I don't think they'll damage SSDs. I haven't seen anything on that. The defrag by default, I think, does trim instead of like actually, using the lifespan of the SSD. So I think that might have been a thing in Windows 7, but Windows 10, I'm pretty sure it's not. And I even mentioned that on a video, I think, about defragging Windows 10, and I don't think I actually said that, so yeah, good to know. The beauty of YouTube, though, if I say something and it's wrong, you'll get corrected about 1,000 times in the comments section, which is I kind of love. There's nothing better than learning by getting roasted. I have not checked out Instant OS at all. Have you tried Parsec Gaming Client on Linux? No, I've been meaning to try it. Right now, I've been using, obviously, Moonlight and some other things, but Parsec is definitely on my radar. I've heard great things. Yeah, free VPNs are terrible. Don't ever use a free VPN. You're better off just using your VPN or using you can set up your own using a VPS. I even have, like, if you want my recommendation, I have Linode as a sponsor. You can go links.christitus.com/Linode is one way to get over there, or just I think linode.com/Chris Titus also brings you there. So those are two ways of doing it. Just open up your own VPS, run your own VPN server if you want. You can do $5 a month, I think, on those. Or my recommended one, if you just want to get outside the US and host somewhere else, I have ExpressVPN. That's a channel sponsor as well, and you get 3 months free with that. So I think a yearly subscription, you get like 15 months for, I think, $100. It could be wrong on that. I need to check up on that. Might probably maybe $50. I don't know. Whatever. But use whatever you want, like I said. VPNs are good for what they are. It's just basically not exposing your IP to a website, which is a good thing. VR gaming on Linux, when VR gaming exists on Linux in today. However, a lot of VR games don't have the budget to really support multiple platforms, and they also have a lot of problems, just budget in general. Even if you're a Windows user, a lot of them are pretty shallow games. I don't hold out a lot of hope for VR gaming in its current state. I think it's going to be like augmented reality kind of thing, where VR, I think, is a bit too much in how we realize it today. I don't think it's ever going to take off in its current incarnation. We'll see what happens with it. I did make a tweet about VR. I have an Oculus, which I actually need to probably put on, eBay or hardware swap and get rid of, because all Oculuses now require a Facebook sign-in. So if you don't have a Facebook, you can't use Oculus. You have to sign up for Facebook. We're making it a requirement now, where Oculus actually started in Linux and actually had Linux drivers and was on it. And then once Facebook bought out the actual company, they immediately dropped Linux support, as it's Facebook. If there's a bad idea, they usually do it. So there we go. Oh, let me get that. I think it's Linode.com. Oh, yeah, Linode.com. I'll put it in chat for you guys. For those that want to, I think you get $100 free for the first 60 days. So you can use that link, get a couple months free, unless you just blow it out of the water and just buy the biggest system they have. I think they have some that are a couple $100 a month if you want like a crazy powerful system, but don't do that. You don't need all that. So that's the actual link for the Linode. What do you think's better, VPN or Tor? Why not both? That's the thing about security. A lot of people think one thing's the end all be all of solutions. Why not VPN, Tor, and then a secure distribution, such as Tails or even Cubes? I've even made a couple videos about Cubes. I don't particularly like Cubes, but I love the idea that Cubes puts out there, which is compartmentalization. Having a specific VM on a specific network that's not tied into the rest of the operating system. Compartmentalization is key to security. So compartmentalizing things into certain VMs, amazing. Doing a VPN, sure, that's a good idea. Using Tor, also a good idea. So use all three. Don't use, Windows or Mac for that instance. You want to use a really secure Linux distribution if you're really security and privacy focused. Using a VPN's a good idea. Also using Tor, yeah. All those things can be of good use. So there you go. And then maybe a proxy on top of it. Why not? It depends on how far you want to go with it. I don't think you can ever truly be secure in today's world or securely or truly private. I highly recommend, if you're interested in this subject, researching and doing a lot of bad information. I think misinformation and putting bad information about you out there and having more bad or misinformation about you than good makes you more secure, because trying to eliminate all your footprint is impossible. You have credit cards, you have banking accounts, you have all these things that tie into you, but the more misinformation you can put out in the world, the better. Like for me, forget about ever being private or secure. It's more about just putting enough misinformation out there that if someone's trying to track me down, they might be led to 5 or 6 different bad places before they actually find where I'm at. There's that aspect of security which I would probably lean on. So there's two different approaches there for sure. What made you switch to Linux? Did somebody recommend something? This is a good question. I don't think I've actually addressed this. I think this will be the last question I answer, but I want to leave with this one because it's a good one. I made a YouTube video and I made a lot of virtualization videos when I first started over XCP-ng, which I still love. I actually like it better than Proxmox, by the way. I've also made Windows Server, but I came in a comment. I made Windows 10 bashing video, basically. I'm like, I hate Windows 10 because of X, Y, and Z, and I kind of list off all the features were gripes everyone was having. And someone was just like, you should do Linux desktop. I was like, sure, why not? I've never really given that a true daily driver run where I was like, I have to use Linux. And I did it on the channel, and I got a bunch of comments saying, you're going to be back to Windows. You can't do Linux full time. And I love that. I thrive. Here's a bit about my personality. I thrive on someone saying you can't do something, or negativity, saying, hey, you suck or you're stupid. Those types of things actually drive me. I like to prove people wrong. When they say something can't be done, I like to make sure it can and do it. So that's what ended up doing it. So that was the initial drive. I had a really rough first couple months with Linux because as a power user of Windows for so long, it was very difficult to switch. But once I got over that hump, I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. I could do this. And then about 6 months later, I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot better. And then about a year later, I was like, hey, this is way better than anything I've ever used before. I'm way more productive now. This has changed my life. But it was a gradual process. It wasn't just like a light switch. And that's what made me do Linux. I love Linux. I still use Windows, of course, for my day job, and also, just gaming and some other stuff that I can't maybe do on Linux. But my whole daily driver, I live in Linux. It's fantastic once you get used to it, once you get over that hump. Because before, when I first started, I kept hearing, hey, try X distribution or this distribution or that, and then everyone was approaching it the wrong way. I thought, I was like, this is dumb. Who cares what distribution you're on? And then I got to thinking about it. I was like, oh, wow, this is just really amazing. A lot of the cool parts of Linux are the customization aspects, because everyone was so focused on distributions that they missed the entire point of Linux, which was make it however you want, make it your own, make it for you. And that's what you can do. You can't do that with Windows. You can't do that with Mac. Even though I make a lot of videos about, hey, this and that, which the next video I'm going to make, actually, as soon as I end this stream, I'm going to start in on it, is customizing Windows to be exactly like Mac. Because guess what? We can do that. We can make it look, feel, everything just like a Mac. So that's going to be probably the next video, is just kind of customizing it. I'll make a GitHub script where, you know, it'll make it a lot easier. I think a lot of people have kind of touched on this, but it's really these really, really long, drawn out videos. So I'm just going to make a script that you can run and do it from chat. Let me know real fast, just by people, just type in, what do you guys want this to be? Debian or Arch? So when making that video, what do you guys want to see? I'm thinking Debian, but if you have a different thought, let me know in chat. Or if you just want to say, you know, which distribution do you like? Because I love to see that. Look at that Arch. Debian, Arch. That's a pretty good. I think I'm gonna have to do both. That's so great. I love it. Yeah. All right. See, that's what I love about the Linux community. You get such a good mix. Such a good mix. I'll do both. Arch is great for those that are on their computer on a daily basis, wanting to try the bleeding edge. Debian's great for that stability. However, using like a lot of repositories or PPAs and those Ubuntu users out there, yeah, that's a big difference. So yeah, I'll do both advanced and beginner. We'll split it up. We'll do a couple of videos then. That'll be great. So yeah, be looking for it. I'll split it up into 2 videos. Then we'll do a Debian and then an Arch-based one, which will be fun. But that's where I'm going to leave today's live stream. Let me know what you guys have thought. If you want to catch me, and just if I didn't answer your question today, by all means, pop over to twitch.tv, ChrisTitusTech. I try to stream at least once or twice there. Usually I'm just playing some weird game, just hanging out. I like to just kind of chill in my off time. When I'm not making a video, I usually am over there, and I'll just kind of hang out, and you can ask whatever question you want. I don't mind answering tech questions, but a lot of times I'll be sitting there talking about the game of the week or just some BS, which is just fun. You just use it to relax over on Twitch. But with that, I'll see you guys next week. If not, for the next tech talk, I gotta find a good. I like the name for this, but I'll definitely archive this out. If you're just coming in on the last bit, just keep this link. It'll be live after I end this, as I just kind of leave them all up on channel. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend.